All right, I think we're live. Welcome to the Gatton CNC Live. This is the third installment. I think it's number 3. Going to try something a little different today. It worked in practice, so hopefully it will work during this live. Normally, I run my Gatton CNC from this kiosk that I have there in that thing there. And that's normally how I run it, but I thought I would hook this thing up to the same computer that I'm using for this live stream. So when you do a screen share of Mach 3 and stuff, you'll see the actual stuff that's going on with this machine. So it worked in practice, so hopefully it'll continue to work during this live. But also, I'm going to check the comments real quick, make sure everybody can hear me. I did a mic check before and it looked like it was working okay. If anybody for some reason can't hear me, let me know. We got a bunch of folks over here. Paul Stewart, Dave Krause, Mario Medina, Milana Dharmawan. I probably butchered that name. Don Puckett's in the house. John Olther. Kevin Els, Rob Schuster, Troy Pritchard, Harry's Place, Hobby's Woodshop. All right, a bunch of folks in here. Thank you all for joining me. Today we're going to talk about, this is kind of goes along with what we talked about last week. We covered homing switches and limit switches and talked about why they're good and why you don't really need them if you don't want to put them on. And this kind of goes along with that. We're going to talk about soft limits, how to set them up for your machine. I can give you a couple of examples with a couple of my machines so you can see how it works. And all right, Chris says loud and clear. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. So before I get started with that, though, I do have a couple of questions for you guys. I want to know how many of you have set up soft limits on your CNC, and also how many of you use the soft limits along with limit/homing switches. Just curious to see who does what there. And also, while y'all are answering that, I will remind folks you can see this live on my Facebook timeline. It's public on there. Just go to Facebook, type in Dave Gatton. You can't miss it. It'll be somewhere on my timeline. It's also pinned to the top of the Gatton CNC Facebook group, so you can watch it there. A third place, you can go to the website, davegatton.com, and it's embedded on the main page there. But you might notice something a little different. I kept getting emails from folks saying, hey, I want to watch that live you did the other day, and I can't find it. And it's because I was trying to keep them unpublished over there on YouTube, and I thought, this isn't worth it. So I'll just go ahead and schedule them published. So that's why if you're a subscriber of mine on YouTube and you got the little notification bell checked, then you probably got a notification saying that I was going live. So that's the difference. Okay, let's see. Hobby says he uses soft limits along with machine limits regularly. He says he just got his new 690 CNC. Rob uses soft limits with homing. No soft limits, homing limits, which is nothing. I'm a keep it simple kind of guy. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that, John. Nothing wrong with that at all. Kevin says homing switches only. I guess no soft limits maybe. Paul says, I don't completely understand him, so I rely on my hard limits. Yeah. Well, hopefully after we get through here, you'll have a better understanding of the soft limits. Okay, so not a whole lot of folks use them. And to be perfectly honest, I don't either. I just set them up to show you guys how you can use them if you want to use them. All right, here we got a different thing here. Terry says soft limits only. Okay, so So we're going to get started. I'm going to flip the controller here on, and I'm going to see which view I want here. Probably this one. And if you watch close, I'm going to hit the reference all home button, which you'll see me hit. See, this is going to be a lot better having the real deal screen on here. So if I hit the reference all home, you can see the axis moving just a little bit. They come, go and hit the switch and come right back off. So if you look here, and I've got the red box around my machine coordinates. So I'm now at my machine home. And you'll also notice here that I've got the soft limits activated. I've got the little green box around the soft limits button. So that means that they are turned on. And now I will jog the machine and show you what the soft limits will do. And I think I'm going to, since the way I've got the camera, you can see this far side of the X over here. So I'm going to leave it right there where it's at. And I'm just going to run this over here. And if you watch closely, you'll see I'm just going to keep this button mashed down. And it will just slowly. There you can see it's like it just puts on the brakes. And you'll see the DRO keeps moving real slow. I've still got my finger on the button, still holding it down. And now you'll see right down here where it says soft limit system movement aborted. So it ran as far as the soft limit would go. And as you can see, I have mine set at negative 48.25. There's still a little room left, but I went ahead and set it for that. And that's plenty far enough. I don't really need it to go any farther. Okay, now I'm going to back that off, and I want to bring it right here. Let me get it right about here. Okay, and now I'm going to bring it forward. And again, I'm just holding my finger on the button. Again, you can see how it slowly stops. And I've kind of got it set up. Most of the time when you set these up, most people will probably set it for about an inch worth of slow down space. I don't know what they call it. I'll see in a minute when I show the thing. But I actually set mine to 2 inches just so it would be more of a dramatic thing so you can see it. And then I've also got the Z set up. So if I hold the Z down, you can see that it creeps to a stop at 5 inches, which if you were here where I am, you would see that that's about probably a quarter of an inch or more below the top of the surface. So, but basically, when you set them up, that's how they work. They limit your machine no matter how long. If you just hold the button, it's going to go as far as you told it to in those soft limits, and then it's going to stop. It's going to slow down and stop and say, "Hey, can't go any farther." So now let me. Now let me show you what the settings are that I'm using. And I've got these, I think, queued up here. Okay, yeah. All right, so let me bring this back in. All right, now I've got 2 examples here. And the reason I wanted to do 2 examples is because my machine, as you saw, when I homed it, it homes to the back right corner, which, I don't know how common that is. That's how I like it, but I think a lot of people probably do it somewhere else. But here are the settings. You can see that the soft max is 0 because that's the home position. And then the soft minimum is negative 48.25. And that's what you saw the DRO read when it went all the way over and couldn't go any farther. And then you can see that I have the slow zone adjusted for 2 inches here on all 3 of these axes. The Y, the same thing. The soft max is 0 is going to be back there where I home it. And then coming forward, I've actually, and I mentioned this last week, I don't even have my homing switch all the way back. I've got it slid forward 10 or 12 inches or so, just so when I home it, it doesn't have to waste all that time going all the way back, because I never use it way back there. So I've got this set for 39 inches. And as you saw, when it comes 39 inches, it's just past this, because that's, you saw the Z kind of right here, just this side of it. And of course, the Z is a little bit different because it zeroes at the top of the axis. So it's going to be, the soft max is going to be 0, and then the minimum is going to be -5 for that. And again, with a 2-inch slow zone. So that's how it is on my Gatton. Now, if you want to set these up and you like to reference home on the lower left-hand corner, take a look at this other picture on the right here, because this is from my Avid CNC. And again, I didn't even know these were set up because I have never turned them on. I've never looked at them. But I thought, well, since it homes to the lower left, let me look to see if they had them set up, and they did. I've just never turned them on. But you see that they're showing the soft minimum is going to be 0, and then the soft max, or the maximum distance it can go, is a positive 49.5 inches. Same thing on the y-axis, and you notice they have their Z set a little weird too. They have the soft max at 8 inches, the soft minimum at 0. If I was going to turn soft limits on and use it, I know I would have to change that, because I have added 1.5 inches worth of thickness to the machine bed, because I put a piece of 3/4 inch plywood on top, and then I glued on MDF strips with the T-tracks on top of that. So I have 3/4 MDF. So I know I would probably have to adjust that one if I used them. But that's 2 different examples. One with the, like I said, my Gatton, the homing is all the way back and to the right. That's why you see the negative values on the X and Y. And for the Avid, it's just the opposite. It homes towards you and to the left, like probably 90% of machines do. So it has positive direction in those soft limits. So let's see here. I see Paul's. Are these set up in the Hobby Box downloads as well? That would be a question for Mr. Hobby, I think. Because I haven't looked. I don't think they are, but Hobby could probably answer that for sure. Paul says, Dave, where's your 0 point? On my Gatton, Paul, it's all the way back, or at least about 39 inches back to the right, and then of course the Z all the way up. That's my thing. In fact, let me see. I got to get on the right window here. It's a little weird trying to run this thing on the same keyboard that I'm using to do the live stream, because the keyboard's sitting in front of me, and you normally have the keyboard sitting in front of you like this, so all the arrows are backwards and stuff. And I have to think about that when I'm doing it. All right, so I'm going to hit reference all home again. And you can see that it's going back. The Y is going back now. And now the X will go over. So that right there is my home position. Now I want to, let me see if I can switch this view and do it this way. I've got a program loaded in here, and here you can see this is kind of leftover. And when you put the soft limits in and you come to this, now a lot of people will probably use this like this. This is this little program. In fact, let me I'm just going to stop it right there and say that that's where I want to run this little program that I have loaded. So I'm going to zero out. Let's bring that Z down a little bit. Okay, so now here I am on work coordinates now. So you see I've zeroed that out. And now if I regenerate that tool path, that's what probably most people look at. They have this setup where they're just seeing their part. You can see I've got the programmed from the center of the blank here to run this. It's just a little 7x7 blank. But if you hit the display mode and then regenerate the tool path, now it shows you the table display, and you'll see this little dotted lines around here, which represent the table. But for new people, you have to be careful about looking at this, because if you haven't set up your home limits, basically told it what size table you have, by default, Mach 3 usually comes with like plus 100 for the max and minus 100 for the minimum. So this, you may look like you're well within the thing, but you may not be, depending on where you're at. So you want to put your soft limits in, and even if you put them in and you don't use them, like there I just turned it off, this dotted line will still show up to give you a representation of what your table is. So I can tell when I get ready to run this part that there's no way, there's no way I'm going to go off the edge, or I'm not anywhere as close to that. So you can get a really good view of what you're doing if you have those soft limits numbers put in there correctly. And again, it doesn't matter whether you have them turned on or off. That's still going to show up whenever you're doing the table display. And again, let me show you, if I move this, say I want to change the position, so I'm going to move it over here and re-zero this X. Now when I regenerate this tool path, you can see now there's where it is. And there's my table, and you can see that that's a pretty accurate representation of where you are. So that's probably one reason why I'm not a fan of, I won't say I'm not a fan of soft limits, because I don't really care one way or another. It's just that I don't use them. I don't know. I just never have, because I haven't needed them. But don't let me try to talk you out of using them if that's what you want to use. It's kind of an extra safety thing. But also, if you're not using any limit or homing switches, if you're not using any homing switches, you have to tell it where home is for those soft limits to work, because you're just telling it how big your table is, but you have to zero it where that would be. If you want to use the lower left-hand corner, and say you've got a 40 by 30 table, so you would have, every time you start up, you would have to bring it to this lower left-hand corner and hit reference all home, and then have your soft limit set to where you're telling it you have 40 this way and 30 this way. I mean, it's got the table, Mach 3's got to know where the machine's at when you're starting. It doesn't have any way of knowing. That's why I'm a big fan of homing switches, just for that reason. You can home it, and then the machine always knows where it's at in relation to that. So One other thing I wanted to show, let me get back on the comments here, make sure I'm not missing any question. Okay, I don't see any other questions. So, but one other thing I wanted to show you, and again, this is stuff I'm trying to point out for the new guys. A lot of you other guys have been running CNCs a while. You probably already know all this stuff, but I'm trying to point out some things that, okay, Ernest says, what position do I normally home? You must have got here late. When I reference all home, mine is all the way back to the back and to the right. That's my home position that I have set up on my Gatton. On my Avid, it's just the opposite. When you reference all home, it comes forward and goes to the left. But again, it doesn't matter where it is as long as you have your soft limits set up with either plus or minus, so it knows which way to go. But another thing I wanted to point out here, like I said, I've got this little program right here. This is just a couple of little block things. But I wanted to point out something that a lot of people may not really use that much. And I think it's really handy, and I use this all the time. And that's a thing called program limits. And no matter where your zero is, and if we go back to here, we can tell that, I'm well within my table here. I'm right, almost in the center of the table. But if I come to this tool path and I use this program limits, and when you think about it, you can learn a lot about this program limits, because you can tell right away when you got the X range and there's numbers on both sides of zero on it, you know that it's programmed for the center point. Same thing for the Y. I can tell at a glance here that I know this is 3/4 inch material, so I can tell by that Z, the lowest the Z is going to go is 0.78. So that tells me that I have set my zero at the top of the material. If this said like for example, I'm basically trying to go, looks like 30 thousandths past the thickness of the material. So if this said 0.03, then I know that I've set my zero at the machine bed. So a lot of things you can look right here. This also says the highest the Z is going to go in this program is 0.8. So if you've got clamps or something that might get in the way, you might want to think about, make sure you're checking it to make sure if you have some kind of move after that, you're not going to hit anything. But that's just really handy, I think, and it's really quick to just flip over there and take a look. And especially this is what I look for most right here, because a lot of times I do things. Sometimes I program off the machine bed, setting my zero. Other times I use the top of the material. And a lot of times by the time I get out here and run it, and I may have programmed it 2 or 3 days ago, I can't really remember which way I did it. But a quick look at this, that tells me that it's programmed at the top of the material. And like I said, if it said just a few thousandths negative, I know that I programmed it for the machine bed. So those are kind of handy things to know. How am I doing on time? Yeah, pretty good. All right, I got another little thing that I'm gonna call it a beginner tip. You might not think it is, but for the beginners that are just starting out and they're always nervous when they're getting ready to hit that cycle start button, I'll tell you something, and I never even thought about this, but because I never saw it until and never used it until I started running my Avid, but they had it set up that way. And I'll show you what it is. I always have if you come down to general config, and right up here where it says tool change, I always run mine to say ignore tool change. So in other words, when I hit cycle start, it's going to take off and go. But that's fine, because I've been doing this a while, and you know, I usually know to check everything beforehand. So, but when I first started running the Avid, I noticed that they had this one checked that says stop spindle, wait for cycle start. So I'm gonna leave it on that for a second, and let me show you what happens. Get this back like that. So when you have this program in here, and you click cycle start, it comes down till it finds that tool, and then it stops and it flashes. You can see where it's saying change tool, and it's telling you what tool and all. And the reason I'm calling this a beginner's tip is because this gives you one more chance, even after you've hit cycle start, to go, well, let me check that tool. And as you see, I can look right underneath where that tool is, and it says it's a 1/4 inch end mill. And this is probably particularly good if you're running, say you've got a part where you're running a, the first tool path is maybe a 60-degree V-bit. Maybe the second tool path that you're running is a 1/2 inch 90-degree V-bit. And then the third tool is maybe a 1/4 inch end mill, and you're going to use that to part it out. Well, you know, what if you forget, you load in the third program, and you get ready to hit cycle start, but you hadn't changed the bit yet? You know, this is for new guys that are still a little nervous when they hit cycle start. You can set it up like this, and it will stop, and it will say, hey, you got the right tool in, check again. So I'm just going to call that a beginner's tip. In fact, I haven't even changed it when I run the Avid. It still does that, except now I know that it does it. So I hit cycle start, and then I just hit cycle start again. Because most of the time I'm not doing a lot of different tool changes and stuff. But I just thought I would mention that because like I said, some of you new guys out there that get really nervous when it's time to hit cycle start, you might want to think about changing that over. And again, let me go ahead and turn this off. Rewind it. You go to config, general config, and set it for stop spindle, wait for cycle start, and it will give you a second chance to make sure you have the correct tool in there. Let's see. Checking my notes here. I had a couple of other things too that I wanted to. Let me turn this off a second, and I'll turn this thing off too because that makes a little bit of racket. Now, last week we were talking about limit switches and homing switches and how you can find, how you can drill a hole and stuff like that so that you can find where you're at, where your zero position was, should something happen. And there's one other thing that I didn't think about until later, and I thought, well, I'll mention it this week, and that is, if you have something like this, I don't use one of these on my Gatton. The only thing I ever check is the Z. So I just have a plain old piece of aluminum angle. That's what I use for my touch plate. But this is the one that came with the Avid. There's also, Bill Griggs makes one, I think, called the Triple Edge Finder. Excellent product. And then there's somebody else that makes another one. Maybe somebody out there knows what it is. I can't remember. But anyway, this, I always use it like this because I'm usually just setting the Z. But this one is made like the Triple Edge Finders, where assuming your blank is where you can put it on a corner, left, bottom left, top left, whatever. You can use this and set all three axes. You can find your Z height as well as find the corner based on using this thing. So that's another way that you can find, if you're not running homing switches or limit switches, and you lose your spot, if you got one of these, then you're probably okay too. And I failed to mention that last week. So let's see here. Okay. Yeah, I could probably show that right now. Restarting carve on a specific line after a bit. I've attempted 2 different times, made firewood. Okay, I can show you that. I think I can show you that pretty quick. Let's turn this back on. Okay, and I'll get this back up here. Okay, so we are all set to run this program. I just have to make sure I don't have the Z too low, and it looks like it's plenty high enough. So we're going to run this. I'm just going to hit cycle start. And again, it's going to ask me for that tool change. So I'll just hit this again. I probably should have adjusted the feeds and speeds on this because it's pretty slow, I think. We'll let it run just a minute, and then I'll just hit the reset button, and I'll show you how you can pick up right where you left off, as long as you know the line number. And this also works not just in case something happens that somehow you get disconnected or the power flickers or something like that, but also if you're running a really long run and you just don't have time, maybe you work all day and you come home and you got a job that's going to take about 8 hours, so you're going to split it up and run a couple hours a day. This would be how you do that. You can run till you get to a good place and just stop it and go right back. All right, so I'm not going to let this run too far. So let's just say that it stops right here. Okay, well, let's first notice where we're at as far as the line. So I'm at line 172 or N1720. And we can tell by looking at this over here that we were doing that pocket for the Acme net right here on the left one. So, we can, if you want to stop for the night, you could go ahead and reference all home and send this home, or if it just happens like this, and as long as you know this line number right here, 172, you can come right back here. We'll hit reference all home, and this is going to take a minute, but we'll let it poke its way back there and Larry said he would have loved to know that tip a year ago. Are you talking about the one where you hit cycle start and then it pauses to tell you about the tool change? Okay, so whether or not you referenced and sent it, parked it at home before you shut it off for the night, or you're doing it because it stopped in the middle of the run and you have to redo it. So if I look at my machine coordinates, I'm at home. We'll even close this file out and act like we shut this off for the night. But I'm going to come back and you come back the next day or whatever, and you load your program back in. And you notice I've homed it, so now that the machine coordinates are 0, and it's still showing this. and that's going to be my G54 offset. So it's all right there where it was. So if I come back and now I just hit go to 0, it should come right back to where it was. Or I should say where the 0 was. Okay. So now I'm going to raise that Z up so I don't start it up with it on the material. And then I'm going to come down here to where it says line number. And I'm going to put 172. And you got to make sure you hit enter. And when it does, you see that it goes right to that line where we just left off. Now, a lot of times what I like to do is actually, after I find the line, I'll come over here and actually bump it back a couple of lines so that it's, because you don't want to rerun the whole thing, but it's okay to run a couple of lines because that's not obviously not going to take very long. So once you get it set, I'm going to start it at line 170. You click this run from here, and it goes through the motions here and comes up right there. So now you'll notice it says press cycle start for preparation move, check the spindle. So when you hit cycle start, it comes up and says it's going to make that move. You want to definitely make sure you have a safe Z set up when you do this. I have mine set at 1 inch. And plus I zeroed this out because I've got the Z well above the material since we're not cutting anything. So when you click that, it will move. And if you look, if I can come back over here and redo this, it's not going to let me do it, I don't think. Maybe it will. Yeah, you can see it's right there where I stopped it at. So now that I've done that preparation move, you make sure your spindle or router is turned on and hit cycle start, and there it goes. It's taken off right from where it was. I guess my big head's in the way, so I'll just leave it on that one. So hopefully, Greg, that it's really not that hard. It's just, a couple of steps you gotta remember. Yeah, Chris mentioned single block is a good beginner tip. Yeah, if you turn on the single block when you get ready to start a program, it will only run one line at a time. So that's another way. If you're a little nervous about hitting cycle start, you just hit that and it's going to do one thing, one line, and then you can hit it again. It'll do another line. And then when you feel comfortable, like, okay, I think I got this, then you can turn that off and hit cycle start and it'll continue on. Let's see. Paul Stewart wants to know if I can change the feed rate on the fly. You kind of can by using this feed rate here. You can adjust it. I have mine set to adjust it by 10% every time. So you can see I've got it adjusted to 150%. You just have to remember, Paul, when you use this to adjust the feed rate, I mean, it's okay to do that, but you just have to remember that when you adjust the feed rate here, you're adjusting it for everything. So it's not just for the X and Y axis, it's for the plunge too. And that may not be what you want. So you just have to be careful. And so you can also go the other way. If something's not sounding right, you think you need to slow it down because you've got it running too fast, you can come over here and hit the minus and slow it down on the fly too. Let's see. I saw another question. Dennis says, can you show me how you ran your cables for your motors? It's nothing. It's nothing special. Let me first let me stop this. We'll turn this off. Get rid of the noise. And then I'll put this up here. I'm just going to give you the quick version right now, Dennis. This board back here, if you walked around here and looked on the back side of this board, you'd see my driver's power supply. My breakout board is, I'm pointing like you can see this. You can't see this though, my little arrow. But right up to the top of that board, you can probably see where the parallel cable plugs in. That's where my breakout board is. And all these wires, I have a terminal block right here. So I have all my motors. Now the motor from this X comes down. It runs through this drag chain and then comes out and connects to that terminal block right there. And then there's other wires coming from the driver to that terminal block there. The Z motor, there's a drag chain. You can't see it because it's all hidden behind this gantry. But it runs, it runs along a channel behind there and then curves up. And I'm moving this mouse like you can see it, and I didn't realize you can't see it. So the Z axis runs in that channel, comes out, and then comes into this other channel over here on the X axis, or the Y axis, I guess, and feeds out that way. The one I have going to the A axis, which is my slave motor on this side, since it's already in the back, I'm just running from the driver. I have another terminal block over there that connects for the A axis. So it's not a fancy setup. It's, when you build one of these, there's lots of, and it's all wood. So it's easy to find a place to screw a block into to mount your drag chain or whatever. All right, we're at 45 minutes, so I'm going to start wrapping this one up. Ralph Henderson says, what would you expect to pay for a rig like what I have? Well, I think most people, again, if you want to go check them out, you can go to this website here. And I've got a frequently asked question things where, I answer a lot of the questions you might have about them. But I think most people on the low end might have, I don't know, $1,200 or so, and it might go all the way up to $2,000 or $3,000. It just depends on how fancy. This is a DIY kit that I sell, this Gatton CNC kit. It's the parts, the plywood parts to build the gantry. And everybody else builds their own table. It's adjustable. As you can see, these cross members are just plain rectangle pieces, so you can make it either shorter or longer, and of course make your table deeper or shorter within reason. And most I think most people probably have, again, depending on how crazy they get with building their, because some guys, I'm using this old metal frame that I already had as my table. But if, a lot of guys, instead of building it like I did in the plans where it's like a bench top thing just to set on a flat surface, they build a big stand on casters and make cabinets so they can have places for storage and put the electronics and all that in. So it's a DIY kit. So how much you put into it is really how much you want to. All righty. I don't see any other questions. Let me scroll back up just for a sec. Terry says, can you hit ref all home before shutting it down, move it to 0? Then when you start up, you'll know where it is. That's one reason, Terry, why I'm one of those weird guys that likes to have it home to the back right. Because when I finish whatever I'm working on, I reach over and I hit reference all home, and you see how slow it moves. It takes its time moving back and over. So while it's doing all that, I'm going around and unclamping my piece and, doing whatever I got to do. But I don't have, if I had that where it was at the lower left, I wouldn't want to do that because it's in my way. I like having it all the way back and to the right. And that way, when I get done, I just hit reference all home. It goes over there, and I can start undoing the clamps or taking a closer look at things, because you always want to look at things close before you unclamp it. Because once you unclamp it, if you realize you messed up, but you could have fixed it if you'd left it on there and not lost your position, you're screwed once you unclamp it. So unless you had some kind of really accurate positioning things. So as you can see, that's let me do it this way. That's how I park mine. Then when I come out the next day and turn this thing on, load my program, first thing I do is hit reference all home, and it just and it's done. So it's all zeroed out. And there's the machine coordinates. So all right, that's going to do it. I went a little long today, guys, but I think we got everything covered that I wanted to. Hopefully some of you got something out of it that you can use. And I guess that's going to do it. We'll get out of here. Everybody have an awesome hump day, and we will see y'all next week. If you got any comments or something you want to see me do, we'll see me demonstrate something, put them down below in the comments. That's why I'm doing these things, is so I can do hands-on stuff and show you instead of just tell you. So if you got anything you want to see me do, just put it down and let me know. See y'all.